যাচ্ছে। We have always connected space with the reality that we see around us, be it the space around our room or trying to appreciate the beauty within the space in a garden. However, we often think very less of the ample source of space that constantly confides within our mind and the power that it creates. Today, we are going to talk about such powerful space created within the powerful mind of the famous English poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge, which he then composed into a poem, Kubla Khan. Starting with Mursalina. Can you tell us about the poem Kubla Khan?
Kublai Khan was a powerful emperor of Mongolia. He had a beautiful capital called Zanadi. He ordered his men to build a palace over a large area. His plan was that the palace should be built at the point where the river Elf flows underground and meets the dark sea. Kublai Khan wanted his vast capital to have a forest of shaded trees. He wanted it to be a hangout for fairies and witches at night. Here is the story of a witch or fairy who is grieving the loss of her lover. The palace is so big that he can now see the shadow of his palace in that holy river. Again, he mentions that this is a palace that does not lack comfort, as the warmth of sunlight and the coolness of the ice caves are available whenever needed. At the end of the poem, it is seen that the poet says he saw a girl who is an Ethiopian and playing distinct musical instruments and singing in the hilly country. Now the poet says with a little extra giddiness that if he can remember that girl and the song she sings, then he will build a magnificent palace like that emperor, which will be completely floating in the air by some unknown magic. And those who hear the song of the maiden and see her terrible beauty will be frightened and immediately tell others to beware of her. Next, they would close their eyes of reason with holy terror, which means that they would turn into their imaginations and they would weave a circle around him 3 times, meaning that they would appreciate his poetry by reading it 3 times, each time going to a deeper level. They would then watch as he drank the milk of paradise or the greatest pleasure by building an illusionary dome and ice cave in the air and playing their damsel's symphony and melody. Samia, what sort of space is created within Kubla Khan?
The poem Kubla Khan is about building a space within Coleridge's mind space. We have created an illustration to show this. So Coleridge brings the artistic theme of life with a description of the sublime beauty of Xanadu Kubla Khan. According to Aristotle's Poetics, the medium of imitation depends on the kind of art. So a poet uses the medium of rhythm, language, and melody. Coleridge used all these methods to give life to his untouched space in his mind. A poet is a painter with words. Kubla Khan is a speaking picture of the ideal world that Coleridge wishes to build. On this note, Aristotle said that art imitates the real world. By creating a space in his mind space, Coleridge is aiming to build his ideal world in his mind. Which brings to my next point. The natural world outside the palace wall is wild and strange, but within the palace walls, things are peaceful and protected. One of the lines in the poem, enfolding sunny spots of greenery, encapsulates this theme. Another line, sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. Here we see two paradoxical elements which can be built to coexist in his ideal world. So here Coleridge is exceeding the limits of life without violating the essential laws of human nature. On the other hand, music imitates through rhythm and harmony, so poetry is more akin to music, and so Coleridge wishes for a muse with the line damsel with a dulcimer. He wishes that he could have the skills of symphony and music of that damsel. He thought he could give closure to his creation of a palace in his mind space. This oxymoronic nature also implies that Kubla Khan is a poem about a poem because he is building a space within his mind space. Now I will be going to Rimi. So Rimi, how would you relate this space within Kubla Khan with the 5 elements of romanticism?
As we know, the five elements of Romanticism are imagination, intuition, idealism, inspiration, and individuality. Poet wishes to build his pleasure dome in his mind through imagination, in fear of not harming the nature. Thus, his dome taking place in his mind is the space which he created through imagination. Intuition and inspiration through the power of divine drive. This is a glorified cause since nature is not harmed through the building of pleasure dome in the poet's mind, whereas if it was built in the holiness of nature, then it would have been polluted by humans. This place consists of mysterious elements of nature such as the divine Elf River flowing down the wonderful secretive cave that hides it from the sunlight. A secluded place hidden away from the pollution and untouched and unseen by human civilization. The marvelous ice-built castle in the sky is the poet's imagination that sparkles from the reflection of sunlight comes from the wondrous inspiration of the poet. This shows that imagination has no limit and can be used to give form to paradoxes. Be it the elegant and marvelous appearance of the ice-filled castle in the sky or the nature havoc caused by the gushes of spring water caused from underneath the earth. A whole world is created through the power of the poet's imaginative and intuitive mind, consists of every element of the real world and beyond. Whatever is in the poet's intuitive world formed through his imagination and does not contain any violation of nature, and instead is filled with perfection, which contributes to more added beauty than the nature could ever possibly create, such as the ice of the floating castle never melting from the sunlight and angels coming down from heaven to see it miraculously built in awe. Thus, poetic power and thoughts create space in mind through their imagination. Poet also took inspiration from nature space to apply and form better creation in mind space. It is authentic and consists of individuality, since the concept is unique and contains apart from the mind power of the poet through his imagination driven by his strong influencing sense of intuition. Now, Janatul, please tell us about the literary devices and imageries present within this poem.
So, as we all know, the Kubla Khan poem is all about three stanzas. So, in the poem, the first and second stanza is all about Kubla Khan's dream images, where some oppositional or contradictory stuff is present. Also, throughout the poem, there are present many literary devices and images. From them, the most I found enjambment, in stop lines, alliteration, assonance, and many more. So I tried to show the literary devices from almost all of the three stanzas. So the first stanza, the speaker mentions the pleasure dome, which is a visual image of Kubla's palace. Pleasure dome decree, here we will see assonance alliteration. Moreover, some symbols like the Elf River, the sunless sea, an imaginary landscape, and the garden symbolize reason and rationality. It is also the image of paradise that Kubla wants to create. Another image is caverns measureless, that is imaginary landscape, which is both huge and unknowable. Another image, deep romantic chasm, is opposite to the gardens. It represents the entrance to a distinct area of the mind. So throughout the poem, there are so many visual images also present. Some I have already mentioned. Others are like girdled round, which are visual images for the build, where the construction is ongoing. Women willing for her demon lover, image of a haunted place. Need this tumult, the visual image of war, that is Kubla's intuition. Beware, beware, the visual image of something higher. Eyes with holy dread, the visual image of divine inspiration and romanticism, and some noteworthy terms like honey, dew, milk of paradise, which is the symbol for holy or poetic inspiration. Also, I found some metaphors like dancing rocks, which is a metaphor for the river, dome in the air, a metaphor for imagination. Another images are like a structure made in imagination poetry, mazy motion, which is metaphor for reverse movement like a snake's curvy movement. And this is also personification like river as the snake. Also, Mazy motion is alliteration, MM. Kubla Khan hears ancestral voices in the reverse tumult, which is a complicated symbol. The Abyssinian made singing Mount Agora. This one is another image of African mountain mentioned in the Bible. Lastly, twice 5 miles are reference to iambic pentameter. In iambic pentameter, we have 10 syllables, which are the most commonly used by neoclassical poets. Some interesting, lastly, literary devices is flashing eyes, his floating hair, which is images of poetic frenzy. Chiasmus, as floating hair, is a mirror image for flashing eyes. Now I'd like to say Rimi to conclude our presentation.
That concludes our discussion on space in Kubla Khan. Thank you for being part of our talk.